in the green room, we were actually talking about some of our older type things that we have, and this whole aspect of Paul Harvey and the rest of the story. And I feel like, Vance, you and I are kind of on the same age. We kind of remember some of those old things, but that's what I love about this whole aspect is we do get to hear some of the things that we don't always hear. Especially with the journey, we get to hear, yeah, we did a lot of great things, but this podcast, we really focus on how did we actually get there? What was that journey get there? What was that narrative that maybe we had a break versus the one that we're actually crafting and creating? So Vance, thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking the time and being a part of our show today.
Yeah, my pleasure. And the crowd goes wild.
Yeah. So, okay, we're totally showing our age here. So obviously, if you're not watching us, you know we're probably all part of the Gen X because that's what we do, right?
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So embrace that Gen X spirit, right? So, all right, well, let's get started with what we've got here. First of all, just to be able to kind of give people a little bit of highlight where we're going, Vance, you've actually worked with Disney. You've been part of Disney in the development, even from the early stages. And I'm sure you've got tons and tons of lessons as you kind of come up through all of those things. And I'm sure you've gotten your school of hard knocks and the whole 9 yards that comes along with that. But let's go ahead and get started with this first question that I'd love to get started with. Who is Vance? We just met. Who are you? Who is Vance?
Who is Vance? Great. I've been asking that question for the last 57 years. So I am one of a kind. I am probably the only direct response marketing strategist and customer experience strategist mixed together on the planet. At least I haven't found another one. But my who grew up in Jersey, not in a log cabin. We actually lived in a real house. Had a great normal upbringing, as normal can be. I did have the fantastic experience of working for the mouse for 10 years, which is where I started to learn that I make a lousy employee. We can talk about that in a little while. So I know that's not a lot to go on, but I've been all over the place. I've been a birth control factory security guard. I've been a rock and roll, I don't know, star is the right word, but played in a rock and roll band that paid for college. So, here I am. Let's just dive into it because I got stuff everywhere.
Well, let's start with this in the aspect, and this is where I really love looking at it. What did you think your life was going to be like? What were the beliefs or the narratives that you felt that you had to follow? And whether that came from society or something your parents said or just the pressure of this is the way I have to be. Where did that start? What were those kinds of beliefs that you had?
It starts in school, particularly high school. Mama and dad say, you're going to college. All right, well, that's just what we did back then. We didn't realize that if not going to college was an option. So I went, got a completely worthless degree and $60,000 in debt. Not worthless. I mean, the experience was great, and I wouldn't have been in a rock and roll band if I hadn't gone to college. So I should thank myself for that. But it really set that I should just follow what everybody else does: is go to college, get a job, have a career, retire. And I didn't think anything of it. And so that's kind of what I did for the first 12 years of my life. I worked at a family-owned business for a little while, which I do not recommend at all. Anybody working at somebody else's family business. You might not even want to work in your own family business, depending on what it's like. Spent a decade at Disney and then spent another decade working corporate jobs, like what I was supposed to do. However, at Disney, I started to realize I do make a lousy employee. I don't like to be told what to do. Hence probably my 2 ex-wives. I just don't like to be told what to do, at least of all by people who I feel are not knowledgeable or intelligent or anything like that.
I guess there's a really interesting question here because here's the interesting thing, and while you're saying these things, I'm seeing parallels in my own life because I did very much the similar things that you did, where we went to college. That's just what we did, right? But we also found ways to. I'm asking you because I know I did this. Found ways to manipulate the system to be able to give me either a little bit of that freedom that I was looking for, or that aspect of, well, I'm going to get myself into this position so I don't have to listen to so-and-so who I don't really. So was that part of that, maybe that little bit of a rebellious back against the system?
Yeah.
Was that what?
Yeah. And I had it lucky because at the time at Disney, it was going through tremendous change. Michael Eisner had just taken over as CEO like 2 years before I got there. And so he was really gung-ho about synergizing merchandise with movies, with theme parks. I mean, really reinvigorating the animation department. So it was an exciting time to be there because a lot of the old rules were getting thrown out. And so I was in positions, maybe that I wasn't ready for, but certainly in positions that I could actually create and develop attractions and restaurants for Disney that are still there today. So yes, I did put myself into the, anytime there was a way to volunteer to be on a team that changed something, I was like first guy to raise their hand, because otherwise I'm bored out of my mind.
Was that like a way of coping?
Yeah, 100%.
Was it a way of coping for you? Was it a way of being able to say, okay, I detest it, like you just said, I hate being told what to do, and so you went this other direction, or you always volunteer? Was that kind of a way of coping within the system? Is that how you felt, or was there?
Yeah, I think so. When you put it that way, I really do think that it was my way of convincing myself that this was the right thing to be doing for my career. And it was, when you do the same thing day in and day out, regardless of who the guests were. I mean, I was running a restaurant. I mean, we saw 1,300 to 1,500 people every morning for breakfast and 1,500 people for dinner. But it was, for us as employees or cast members, it was the same thing every night, every day. And it just gets boring. So yeah, I was looking for ways to, because I've also found that when I get bored is when I get in trouble. So if I can stay unbored, I won't get in trouble.
Yeah. So let's just wrap this little narrative in a nutshell if we can. When you're looking at that, what did you believe you had to do? What was the, kind of a short, brief comment of, this is the way I have to live my life? What was that like for you? Or what would you wrap it up in a nice bundle, if you can?
Yeah. If I can put a bow on it, I will. But it was, okay, Vance, you're in corporate America. You have been doing it for a while now. You're going to stay in corporate America. You'll just figure out a way to continue to be on opening teams or change teams or things like that.
So what then was the transition? What really shook you and said, okay, maybe this isn't the way that I have to live. Maybe there are some things that I can branch out and do differently. What was there a monumental shift, or was it something small? And for everybody, it's different. So I'm really curious to see and dig into this aspect of, how did you shift your mindset?
Yeah, well, it got shifted for me.
So often the case.
So I got another job out after Disney. And I was director of food service for a large retirement community. So very good, easy transition for me. We had 3,000 residents. And at the time, my team was about 400 people. Everything was great for about 4 years till I got bored. And so I started to tinker and edit, and they were all for the benefit of the residents or for the benefit of the employees. But this was a company that had, it wasn't standards, but I think it might have even been that word. But once we had a standard, we don't change it. That's it. That's the standard. We do it. And well, that didn't sit well with me. So I started changing things. And this was a large company. So they had 15 retirement communities of this size up and down the East Coast. And most of what we had done, it was myself and actually another guy from Disneyland, California, that they brought in to really revitalize the food service and make it into not hospital food like you would think at a retirement community, but resort style. And it took us 3+ years to get there, but between the two of us, we got all 15 of these communities to a point where it was resort style living. And but I kept going. I'm like, well, we can't just sit back and relax. We gotta keep improving, keep getting better. And they didn't want to. And so I just said, well, forget it. I'll just improve my community. And so I did. And every time I did, they said, that's not the standard. You got to stop. And I didn't stop. And they finally just said, bye-bye, which was painful. So I got another job, corporate America. And this did not, it started okay, but it didn't end well. I had an idiot for a vice president, and I ended up getting, we don't need to go through the whole story, I ended up getting fired from that job. So in the course of 5 years, I got fired twice. I said, well, you know what? I think the world's trying to tell you something, Vance. You should not be an employee. You make a lousy one. You need to do something on your own.
So let me ask you this on this whole firing aspect, because I've had several people come in, and often, especially with this narrative, what we were just talking about, in short, you're like, we live the corporate, we drive the corporate, we've got to get a job, and then we retire. I mean, and that becomes our identity. So in that firing of 2 times, how did that impact your value, like your self-worth, your confidence? How did that impact you as an individual, as a man? Because whether we like it or not, a lot of times that, whether it's a good thing or not, it hurts. I mean, it really hurts when you get fired. It's like a smack in the face, and it just shakes us to our core.
Yeah, the first one sucked. I'll be honest. The first one was, like, look, I'm trying to do the right thing here. And so, it made me question, well, should we not be improving? Should we just sit back and let things run? And then I was thinking, no, that's not the way. I mean, Disney put this in me, because even though we got things, their method is continuous process improvement. Walt Disney called it plussing. And we're going to plus this show. We're going to plus this restaurant. We're going to plus. And that's why Disney is successful, is because they never sit back on their laurels. So, I mean, having that been my first job, that really set me in my ways of how I was going to approach any business. And so, it did shake me the first time. Second time, I kind of knew it was coming. And so I was prepared for it. I knew the guy was a hothead, and he was going to do it improperly, which he did, which gave me a nice 6-month severance package that I would not have gotten had he not been a hothead. So that gave me time to really figure out what it is I wanted to do. I didn't lose any income. I still had the company car, and it wasn't as bad. Yeah. The first time sucked.
Yeah, I got you on that. So when we're looking at this whole aspect, what beliefs did you have to really come back and assess and say, this is how I'm going to live my life? What were those? What can you? Again, we're kind of putting bows on things and bullet pointing things, but what were those beliefs that you were able to come out and say, okay, I need to change this one. I need to keep this one. I need to, like, what? How did you go through that process of the analytic aspect of your life and the way that you were living?
Yeah, so I mean, I looked at everything. We haven't even talked about the 2 ex-wives, which the first one came after at some point at Disney. The second one came after I left the retirement community, and for various reasons. But my frame of mind at the time was, damn it, I'm right. There was nobody that could convince me that what I wasn't doing was wrong, and maybe that's being pig-headed and stubborn. but I knew in my mind and in my heart what I was doing was right. And it was just a matter of I didn't need the change. I needed to find the career, the path that would allow me to be who I am and be able to make money at the same time.
Did you feel like you were acting as somebody else through those other careers and through those other jobs?
It's not so much at the retirement community, but the last corporate job I had, yeah, I mean, I was, okay, weekly reports. Yes, sir. Got them here, done. Did you visit all of your locations? Yes, done. Here's the checklist. It was everything by checklist. And as long as the checklist was done, they left you alone, which again, to me just seemed backwards, but
Yeah, yeah,
what it was.
especially coming from that belief of the plus, constantly improving,
Yeah.
constantly adding and making it better, and then coming from that, and you're like, well, if I got my checklist done, I'm done. It's just, oh man. So, what did you do in this process? You said you had what, 6 months ish, maybe
Yep.
about a year or so to really evaluate and say, okay, what is it, and how is it that you're going to look for things? And I know that there are people probably listening that are in similar situations, and they're looking at this aspect of I've done this all my life. I don't know much else, and I know it's not right for me because I know who I am. How did you go through the process of discovering where you can fit and the companies that you can work with? And how did you go through that? Because I know a lot of people are specifically asking that type of a question right now. And whether they're in
Yeah,
their
sure.
40s or 50s or wherever, they're looking and saying, I need to make a change.
Yeah. And it's not easy. I mean, I was early 40s when I made this change. So it's, you get to a point where you really have to take stock and say, okay, what is it that I want? And I kept coming back to ownership of something. I didn't know what, but being the guy. With all of the responsibilities and headaches that comes with. I get it. But I wanted to be the guy. And I looked at a number of CEO jobs, actually accepted one. I was supposed to work at a wedding factory. So essentially, it was one of those beautiful waterfront properties that they just had, 6 weddings Saturday, 6 weddings Sunday, and they were closed during the week, and it made millions of dollars. So I was supposed to do that. It didn't last and didn't work out, but so I said, okay, fine, got to do something on your own. Well, what the heck are you going to do? Well, we didn't have a whole hell of a lot of cash sitting around. So, starting a restaurant, starting a hotel, things that I had done in my past were off the table. I said, all right, well, let's look at franchises because those were proven concepts. They've been shown to work. People are successful at them, proof of concept, et cetera, et cetera. Again, looking at restaurants because that's what I had done. Till I found out that most franchises required you to have $1 million liquid cash, which again, I mean, I had a nice retirement account, but certainly wasn't $1 million liquid cash. So I said, all right, well, let's shrink down your expectations of what you're going to own and let's look at something else. So I was actually working with a franchise headhunter. I believe they call them franchise consultants now. For lack of a better term, franchise headhunter, and we looked at all sorts of stuff. He was like dry cleaners, fruit smoothie stands, carpet cleaning. I mean, there was like probably half a dozen. None of them really piqued my interest until he started talking about this carpet cleaning franchise, and he says, "Look, they've got a phenomenal product. Okay, everything that they create works." There's nobody in your area. You could be exclusive. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't even vacuum. What am I going to do with a carpet cleaning business? And so I ended up talking to actually the CEO of the company. I didn't even bother with the franchise rep at the company. Had a great conversation with him. Thought it was a good match for what they were producing and what I could bring to the table as far as creating experiences and marketing. because the other thing I loved about this franchise is they didn't touch marketing, which was beautiful because most franchises can't do marketing. They're franchises; they're not marketing companies. So we signed the deal, I signed it for a very large area. So it was multiple licenses spread out over 12 months. Ended up being with them for 15 years. So it was a good relationship. But the key thing that happened 3 days after we had signed the contracts to start this franchise, my wife had a cerebral aneurysm and was in the neuro ICU of Johns Hopkins for 11 days. Almost died. And so the plan was I was going to start this business. She was a senior manager with Starbucks, and we were going to live on her salary while I got the business up and running. Well, we started at zero. We had her long-term disability insurance, but not her full income, which was a eye-opener. I'm sure I could have gotten out of that contract and just gone and found a job so that we could have income. But we both talked and we're like, no, Vance, you're going to be miserable. And I can't live with you if you're miserable, because I'm miserable right now because my brain hurts. So we said, okay, let's make a run of it.
So there's two questions that come to mind. One of them is due to the fact that I've owned businesses and I know this aspect and what you're going through. But can you articulate how scary that is to start with a big fat goose egg and attempt to start a business while attempting to be to also take care of somebody that's not doing well? Can you just describe how scary that is? Because I think some people, they think that they're the only ones that are going through that fear, and they're the only ones going through those challenges. And that's what this is about, is just to identify and say, you're not the only one.
I mean, I know it today, but I didn't know it then. But I was in a funk. I mean, you want to talk depression. I didn't realize what it was, but you can't go through stuff like that and not have it affect you. Especially the not knowing what's coming next, whether that be complete financial ruin, whether that be my wife passing, whether that be the business just takes off and is an astronomical success and I'm an overnight millionaire. I didn't put a lot of stock in that last one, so I had to focus on the other two. Yeah, I mean, you're mean and nasty to people you don't mean to be mean and nasty to. Everybody deals with stress differently. I internalize mine, which just makes me grumpier and crawling into my hole deeper and deeper. But the thing that I put all of my energy into was, damn it, I'm not going to fail. I mean, that was just, failure's not an option. And I know that's cliche and you hear that a lot. But usually you hear it from some like HR muckety muck that says, sorry, failure's not an option. You need to, but I was talking about my life here. So, from that point on, I mean, this all happened in like 2 weeks time. I mean, I just went from, high on the hog to, in the crapper. So.
Yeah.
But I decided, not that it matters anymore, but my wife was also pregnant with our daughter at the same time, which added extra stress because, we didn't know if she was going to lose a baby. And, the hospital was saying, yeah, you should, give up on the pregnancy. It's too much stress on your brain. And we're like, no, that ain't going to happen. So she's healthy. They're both fine. My wife is back to work. Got a little bit of side effects, but yeah. So what we started at zero, and we could only go up from there.
Right. So what are the habits, and this kind of transitioning? What do you do today to write the narrative and to craft your life? But what are some of the habits and routines and actions that you have put in place or that you currently do? Obviously, there's definitely the attitude. I can hear it through your voice. You have that. I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to give up. I'm just going to. And that attitude, I'm sure, has served you well. But what are some of the other practical things that you do on a daily basis or weekly basis that help you maintain that focus and maintain the drive to keep going?
Yeah, certainly. Well, first and foremost is controlling my time. That is something that I learned a long time ago. That if you don't control your time, your calendar, somebody else will do it for you. And that magical thing of physics that any task will take up as much time as you give it. So I stopped giving myself hours and days and said, sorry, you got to get this done in minutes. Because if you don't get it done in minutes, that means you're going to be, I had to go out and clean carpet. I didn't get it done by 8 o'clock and I wasn't on the road at 8 o'clock. I'd be late for my first appointment. So I learned very quickly to completely block out my calendar. I mean, I can tell you when I go to lunch next Thursday. I can tell you, when family time is planned, when swim meets are, everything's on the calendar. And I essentially script each and every day. I know exactly at what time I'm doing what. I know exactly for a project. Let's just say I'm writing a blog post. Well, I get 20 minutes to do that. That's it. If I can't get it done in 20 minutes, well, it has to be done in 20 minutes. And as good or bad as it is, it goes up. The funny thing is, when I started the business, the carpet business, I didn't know anything other than being scrappy and being tenacious and just, fighting for every single dollar. So this was 2007, great year to start a business, by the way.
That was the same year everything fell off the table, by the way. All construction dropped off. Just so people understand, and the whole world basically stopped in 2007 for some crazy reason. But go ahead, keep going with this carpet story.
So all of my fellow franchisees were sitting fat and happy because they were running big Yellow Pages ads, and that's all they needed to do to get business. I was like, well, I can't even get an ad until the next edition of the Yellow Pages, which is 8 months away. So I didn't have that. So I had to go and literally scrounge up the business. And we got through the recession. And of course, I started at zero. So I only had one direction to go, which was up. But I continued that scrappiness, that tenacious, that every dollar matters mindset. And if it was a networking event, if it was an ad, if it was a radio spot, if it was a whatever, get it done, get it done. And soon, come 2010, 2011, I had surpassed all of my other franchises, and they were starting to flounder because Yellow Pages was going under because of this thing called the internet. Go figure. And by 2014, 2015, I am 40% higher in price to my competitors and my own franchisees because of A, never giving up and being tenacious and scrapping, and B, taking all my Disney knowledge, inserting it into a commoditized business, thereby creating experiences that I could charge a premium for. So, yeah, I know there's a lot there to unpackage, but primarily it comes back to the whole, you got to control your calendar. You got to control your time.
Which is interesting, especially when you're saying you don't want to be told what to do, but yet you allow your calendar to tell you what to do. It's a kind of an interesting oxymoron right there.
It's my calendar, though. The thing is that I do tell the calendar what to do. I tell it, okay, like I'm in a couple of networking groups, which is probably how you and I met.
Yep.
And we have one-to-one meetings to get to know you, but I only allow 4 of those a week. So I control it.
Exactly.
My vacations are the first thing plugged into the calendar at the beginning of the year.
Well, and that's,
it's just done.
That's where you set your priorities. And I love that. So you're setting your calendar, setting your priorities, setting your time limits. And that is something that so many people forget to do in this whole management and leadership development, is that they forget that they have to control all of those things. That I call it playing against the clock. And I love the way that you put all of that. So when you're looking at all of these things, what would you say? I mean, we're kind of getting close to time, and I feel like we could just
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
for hours and hours. But what
yeah,
is
right.
what is the one thing out of everything that we've kind of talked about? What would be the one thing, and maybe it's something new that you would want to leave with somebody that's listening? Hey, don't forget this, or don't miss this piece.
Yep. And we didn't use the word, but it's been the theme throughout our conversation, which is implementation.
Mm.
You've got to do something. You've got to implement on your ideas. Actually, I mean, I'm not a big fan of sayings and phrases, but the one I do have is you won't profit unless you implement. And if you take the word profit out and you want to put in the word success, you won't have success unless you implement. You got to do something. I mean, I get all the manifestations and the brain exercises, but until the pen hits the piece of paper, or you get behind the wheel and start going, something's got to happen in order for that success to come about or the profits to come about, etc. So implementation.
I love that. I love that aspect because so many people just absorb, and then they never actually do anything. So that's just incredible. All right. So how can somebody get in contact with you? Maybe they heard something and they're just like, man, I need to get this guy. I need to work with him. I need to hear more about his story. How can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, best place is deliverservicenow.com, which is my main website. As we discussed earlier, I have many, but deliverservicenow.com is the best spot. And if you really want to get to know me, there's an option there where you can actually download a copy of my book, Systematic Magic. You're more than welcome to go to Amazon and get it and give Jeff Bezos more money for his next yacht, or you can just get it from me and it's free. Just pay a little bit in shipping. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that offer. I mean, that's not very often we get offers here, but this is a great offer to be able to say, yeah, this is something that you can take with you. And I love that about you. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
You have a lot of other stuff that is available as well, which we didn't talk about. So I highly encourage people reach out, talk to Vance, or go do some research, find out his background, find out his story. And again, as we kind of go all through these things, I want to thank Vance for being here. But as you guys and gals are listening, make sure that you continue to write and craft your narrative, because each story is important. Each story is critical, and you are the only one that can craft your narrative. Keep going, keep writing, and keep doing. Implement, according to Vance. Implement. We're going to end with that one. So implement, everybody.
Fantastic.